Hello there, dear. My name is Liza. I'm 73 years old, and I want to share a story with you that still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. It's about how I discovered that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. You know, when you reach my age, you think you've seen it all. I was married to Harold for 48 years before he passed away 5 years ago. We raised 4 beautiful children together, and I spent 35 years as an elementary school teacher. I thought I knew what life was about: family, hard work, and treating people with kindness. But sometimes life has other plans for us. Harold and I lived a simple life in our little house on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, just a cozy 3-bedroom home with a garden where I grew the most beautiful roses you've ever seen. Harold was a mechanic, worked at Johnson's auto shop for over 30 years. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. When Harold got sick with cancer 3 years before he passed, I took care of him every single day. I fed him, bathed him, gave him his medications, held his hand through every chemo session. "Liza, you're an angel," he would say. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those were the hardest years of my life, but also some of the most precious. When you're facing the end, you realize what really matters. At least, that's what I thought. After Harold passed, I spent 2 years just existing. You know how it is when you lose your life partner. Everything feels empty. My children, bless their hearts, they tried to help, but they had their own lives, their own families. I was just the grieving widow who needed to move on. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in October. I was in my garden trying to save my roses before the first frost, when a black sedan pulled up in front of my house. Out stepped a man in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. "Mrs. Liza Henderson?" he asked, walking up my driveway. "Yes, that's me," I replied, wiping my hands on my gardening apron.
My name is Robert Matthews. I'm an attorney from Matthews & Associates. I need to speak with you about a rather urgent matter regarding your late husband's estate. My heart skipped a beat. Estate? Harold and I never had much money. What could this be about? I'm sorry, Mr. Matthews, but Harold's estate was settled years ago. There must be some mistake. Ma'am, I'm afraid there's no mistake. May I come in? This is quite a sensitive matter. I invited him into my living room, the same room where Harold and I used to watch our evening shows together. Mr. Matthews sat on Harold's old recliner. It felt strange seeing someone else in his chair. "Mrs. Henderson, I represent the estate of Margaret Wilson. She passed away last month, and, well, this is rather delicate, but your husband Harold is named as the primary beneficiary in her will." I stared at him, completely confused. "I'm sorry, but there must be a mistake. I don't know anyone named Margaret Wilson." Mr. Matthews opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Henderson, according to Miss Wilson's will, she and your husband had a relationship that lasted over 20 years. She left him her entire estate, but since he predeceased her, the inheritance now goes to you." The room started spinning. Relationship? What kind of relationship? "Ma'am, according to the documents I have here, they were romantically involved. She has letters, photographs, and other evidence documenting their affair." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's impossible. Harold would never. We were married for 48 years. He loved me." "Mrs. Henderson, I understand this is shocking, but Miss Wilson was very specific in her will. She said, and I quote, 'Harold was the love of my life, even though he could never leave his wife. Now that he's gone, I want his family to be taken care of. I couldn't breathe. This strange woman, this Margaret Wilson, was claiming she had an affair with my Harold for over 20 years, and now she was leaving us money? How much money are we talking about? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Henderson, Margaret Wilson was quite wealthy. She owned several properties and had substantial investments. The total value of the estate is approximately $2.3 million. I asked Mr. Matthews to leave the documents with me. I needed time to process this information. Alone in my house, I opened the folder with trembling hands. The first thing I saw was a photograph of Harold, my Harold, with a woman I'd never seen before. They were at some restaurant, holding hands across the table. Harold was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. The woman was elegant, well-dressed, probably in her late 60s. I flipped the photo over. In Harold's handwriting, it said, "Maggie and me. Anniversary dinner, 2015. Anniversary? What anniversary? There were dozens of photos. Harold and Margaret at the beach. Harold and Margaret at what looked like a cabin in the mountains. Harold and Margaret dancing at what appeared to be some kind of formal event. In every single photo, Harold looked happy, genuinely happy. But the letters were what broke my heart. They were love letters written in Harold's handwriting, addressed to "My dearest Maggie." I recognized his writing immediately. The same handwriting that used to leave me little notes saying he'd be working late at the shop. One letter, dated just 2 years before he died, read, "My darling Maggie, I wish I could give you more than these stolen moments. You deserve so much better than a man who can't fully commit to you. But please know that you are the sunshine in my otherwise ordinary life. Liza is a good woman, and I can't hurt her by leaving after all these years. But my heart belongs to you, always and forever, Harold." I dropped the letter as if it were on fire. Liza is a good woman? Is a good woman? That's how he described me? Like I was some obligation he couldn't shake off? I kept reading, even though each word felt like a knife in my chest. Letter after letter, spanning over 2 decades. Harold writing about how much he missed Margaret, how he dreamed of a life where they could be together openly, how guilty he felt for loving 2 women at the same time. In one letter from 2010, he wrote, "Maggie, I know you want me to tell Liza the truth, but I can't. She's given me her whole life. How can I tell her it wasn't enough? How can I tell her that despite her devotion, her cooking, her care during my illness, my heart yearns for someone else?" There were receipts, too. Hotel receipts from the Riverside Inn, the same hotel where Harold used to go for his fishing weekends with his buddy Jim. Except now I realized Jim probably didn't exist, or at least wasn't on those trips. Restaurant receipts from romantic dinners I was never invited to. Jewelry store receipts for gifts I never received. Harold had been living a double life for over 20 years, and I had been completely clueless. The most devastating document was a letter Margaret had written to Harold just months before his cancer diagnosis. "Harold, my love, I'm 68 years old. I don't have forever, neither do you. When are we going to stop hiding? When are we going to live our truth? I love you enough to share you with Liza, but I'm tired of being your secret. I want to wake up next to you every morning, not just stolen weekends. Please think about it. We could still have a few good years together." Harold never responded to that letter. 3 months later, he was diagnosed with cancer, and apparently, he never saw Margaret again. She had waited for him to choose her, and he never did. Instead, he came home to me and let me take care of him until he died. I called my children the next day. All 4 of them came over that evening: Michael, Susan, Patricia, and James. I'd prepared dinner, as I always did when they visited, but I could barely eat. "Mom, you look terrible," Susan said, concern in her voice. "Are you feeling all right?" I showed them the folder. The reaction was immediate and unanimous: denial. "Mom, this is obviously some kind of scam," Michael said, flipping through the photos. "Someone's trying to take advantage of you." "These photos could be doctored," Patricia added. "Dad would never do this to you, to us." "But look at the handwriting," I said. "That's your father's handwriting. You all recognize it." James, my youngest, studied the letters carefully. "Mom, even if these are real, maybe Dad had some kind of mental episode. Maybe this woman took advantage of him when he was vulnerable." "For 20 years?" I asked. "James, look at the dates. This started when you were in high school. When I was taking care of all of you, making his lunches, doing his laundry, supporting his dreams, he was with her?" Susan started crying. "I can't believe this. Dad was a good man. He loved you, Mom. I saw how he looked at you." "Apparently, he looked at someone else the same way," I said bitterly. Michael, always the practical one, focused on the money. "Mom, even if this is true, you shouldn't take that money. It's dirty money." "Why shouldn't I take it?" I asked. "This woman lived with the knowledge that she was sharing my husband for 20 years. She got the best parts of him: the romance, the excitement, the adventures. I got the routine, the illness, the caregiving. Don't you think I'm owed something?" "Mom, you can't be serious," Patricia said. "What would people think?" "What would people think?" I repeated. "Patricia, your father had a 20-year affair, and nobody thought anything of it because nobody knew. I've spent 5 years grieving a man who apparently wished he was with someone else. What do I care what people think?" That night, alone in the house that suddenly felt more like a prison than a home, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I called Mr. Matthews the next morning.
"Mr. Matthews, I want to accept the inheritance." "That's wonderful, Mrs. Henderson. I'll begin the paperwork immediately. But I have some conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "I want to meet with Margaret Wilson's family. I want to understand who this woman was. I want to know about the life my husband lived when he wasn't with me." 3 days later, I found myself sitting in the living room of a beautiful house across town. Margaret's daughter, Linda, and her son, Robert, were there to meet me. Linda was about my daughter Susan's age, a kind-looking woman with her mother's elegant features. "Mrs. Henderson, I want you to know that my mother never wanted to hurt you," Linda began. "She talked about you often. She always said you seemed like a lovely woman, and she felt terrible about the situation." "Felt terrible enough to end it?" I asked. Robert, Margaret's son, leaned forward. "Mrs. Henderson, I think you need to understand something about our mother. She wasn't a homewrecker. She met your husband at a grief counseling group in 1995. They were both struggling with loss. Harold had lost his father, and our mother had just lost our dad to a heart attack. They became friends first," Linda continued. "Mom told us that Harold talked about you all the time in the beginning, how devoted you were, how you kept the family together. She admired you. But somewhere along the way, friendship became something more," Robert said. "Mom knew it was wrong, but she also knew Harold was genuinely torn. He loved you both, in different ways." Linda showed me a photo album. "These are pictures Mom took over the years. She wanted me to show them to you." The album told a story I never knew existed. Harold helping Margaret plant a garden at her house, Harold fixing her car, Harold reading to her when she had pneumonia,
Harold holding her when she cried on the anniversary of her husband's death. "Your husband wasn't just Mom's lover," Linda said softly. "He was her best friend, her confidant, her support system. When she got breast cancer in 2008, Harold drove her to every appointment. I was sick in 2008, I said quietly. I had that terrible flu that lasted for weeks. Harold took such good care of me." "He took care of both of you," Robert said. "Mom told us Harold would leave her house at night to go home and make sure you had everything you needed, then come back to check on her in the morning." I started to cry, not from anger anymore, but from confusion. How do you process learning that your husband was capable of loving two women so completely?
Linda handed me a letter. "Mom handed this for you. She made me promise to give it to you if anything ever happened to her." I opened it with shaking hands. "Dear Liza, if you're reading this, then Harold has passed away, and you've learned about us. I can only imagine how betrayed and hurt you must feel, and I am deeply sorry for that pain. I want you to know that Harold talked about you every day, not with resentment or complaints, but with genuine love and admiration. He told me how you supported his dreams when you were young, how you raised his children to be good people, how you never made him feel bad about working long hours at the shop. Maggie, he would say, Liza is the most selfless person I've ever known. She gave up her teaching career to raise our kids and never once complained. She deserves better than me." I know what you're thinking. If he felt that way, why did he have an affair? The truth is, Harold was a complicated man with a big heart. He needed different things from different people. From you, he got stability, family, a sense of home. From me, he got adventure, romance, someone to dream with. It wasn't that you weren't enough, Liza. It was that Harold was too much for one person to handle all of his needs. I've left you my estate not out of guilt, but out of respect. You gave Harold 48 years of your life. You earned that money through every meal you cooked, every shirt you washed, every night you waited up for him to come home, every day you cared for him when he was dying. I got to love Harold in secret, which was sometimes easier. You had to love him in public with all the responsibilities and expectations that came with being his wife. That takes a different kind of strength. Use this money to live the life you want, Liza. Travel to places Harold never took you. Buy things he said you didn't need. Be selfish for once in your life. You've earned it. With respect and admiration, Margaret. That letter changed everything for me. I realized that I had spent 5 years mourning a man I thought I knew, when the reality was much more complicated. Harold wasn't a villain who betrayed me. He was a flawed human being who loved imperfectly, but genuinely. And Margaret wasn't a homewrecker. She was another woman who loved the same complicated man I did.
Now, I know what you're thinking. What did I do with that money? Did I forgive Harold? Did I honor Margaret's wishes? Well, stick around, because what happened next surprised everyone, including myself. I took Margaret's advice. With the $2.3 million, I did something I'd never done in my entire life. I put myself first. I bought a beautiful condo in Florida with an ocean view. I enrolled in art classes and discovered I had a talent for watercolor painting. I joined a travel group for seniors and visited Italy, Greece, and Ireland, places Harold always said we couldn't afford to see. My children were scandalized. "Mom, you're acting like a completely different person," Susan said during one of our phone calls. "Maybe I am," I replied. "Maybe for the first time in 73 years, I'm acting like myself instead of who everyone expected me to be." I started dating too. Can you believe it? At 73 years old, I joined a senior dating website. I met a wonderful man named George, a retired teacher like myself, who treats me like I'm the most fascinating woman he's ever met. "Doesn't it bother you that I was married for 48 years?" I asked him on our third date. "Liza," he said, taking my hand, "your capacity to love one man for 48 years tells me everything I need to know about your heart." My relationship with my children has improved too, though it took time. They eventually came to understand that discovering Harold's affair wasn't the end of my world. It was the beginning of my freedom. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy to share something this personal, but I believe our stories have power. If this story touched you in any way, please give it a like to help me reach other people who might need to hear it. In the comments, I'd love to know, do you think I made the right choice? Would you have been able to forgive? Have you ever discovered something that changed your entire understanding of your life? And if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, stories of women who found the courage to start over, no matter how old they are, please subscribe and ring this notification bell. Every day, I share a new story of resilience, second chances, and the strength we find when life doesn't go as planned. Today, I'm happier than I've been in decades. I've learned that it's never too late to discover who you really are when you're not trying to be what everyone else needs you to be. Margaret Wilson gave me more than money. She gave me permission to live my own life. And you know what? Harold would be proud of me. The woman he fell in love with 50 years ago had dreams and ambitions too. I'm finally pursuing them. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes learning the truth, even when it hurts, sets us free. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to start writing a new chapter of your story.